get into it. Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Jam the Hype Live, where we help Christian urban artists effectively influence our modern culture to live lives transformed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm your host, George Moss. Got my co-host with me here, and her name is Cherie. What's up, Cherie?
Hey, what's up, brother? How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Glad to be on here. Super excited about the conversation that we're going to be having right now, because one of the things going on in our society right now is everybody is thinking about how do we get back to normal? How do we get, our whole world has been shaken. We live in a completely different world right now. And all of us are thinking about the future in a new way. Like, how do we prepare ourselves for the future? And we're obviously thinking about that in terms of like economic situations. What are we going to do as far as money goes? What are we going to do as far as food or emergency stuff that we got going on? Like, we're all kind of on edge about that. But I also want to think about what are we going to be doing as artists, as creators, during this time, and what is it going to look like, 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now, next year, as we've been, like, for me, most of my career has been built on being on the road and doing shows. And that's most of the artists that are listening to this show. Like, all of my shows have been canceled. And most of my content is centered around me going out on the road and doing shows. So like vlogging content, photos on Instagram, all that stuff. So I've had to really rethink, what am I going to do? And honestly, I've been a little distracted, kind of just, I got to take care of things at home. Or I've almost been kind of uninspired to even create anything because of everything that's going on. How, as an artist, like, a creator for you, like, what has your process been like during this time?
Yeah, I think creating has been difficult unless I'm forced to. So if I'm being commissioned to write something or commissioned to do this or that or the other, but just sitting down and creating definitely has been difficult. I think I have Zoom fatigue. So by the time the day is over, I don't want to touch anything digital. I'm like, I'm done. I just want to literally sit on the couch and have human conversation with my husband. So that's tough, but we've got to press through. But what it has helped me do is take time to clean up some of my admin stuff for Cherie Music. So make sure all my publishing info is correct. Make sure I'm signed up for all of the ways to get paid on the digital platforms. So I've been spending some time doing that. It's been helpful.
Yeah. So I've got some thoughts on this, and I'm really excited about this conversation today, because I've had several conversations with a good friend of mine in the music industry. He's not only one of those dudes that's like a dope artist and has tons of experience being on some of the biggest tours in Christian music, but he's also one of the guys that's positioned himself to be able to not only like survive during this time, but really thrive during this time. So you guys know him, you guys love him. Dope artist, producer, and Reflection Music Group. I want to welcome to the show my homie, Derek Minor. What's up, Derek?
What up? Hold on. What up, though?
There it
is. Hey.
Coming from the living room. How you been holding up, man?
Man, it's been interesting.
Yeah.
The coronavirus has shut down a lot of stuff, but at the same time, I've been blessed to be able to hang with my kids a lot more. But then also, it's like I've been hanging with my kids a lot more, so I'm like loopy. You know what I'm saying? But no, it's been that. It's been good. Like, it's been a cool season. I'm definitely not used to being this stationary, but hey, everybody's sitting down, so.
I know for you specifically, like you guys, you and Prop released a really, probably by far my favorite Prop album ever that you guys that he's ever put out. You guys had this whole collaboration thing, and then like you had the whole tour planned out in California, up down the West Coast, and that obviously all got squashed and stuff. But what has it been like for you? How have you been able to pivot from everything being shut down?
Well, I don't think there's actually a pivot you can do in a sense. There's just, for me, what it's been is, I've had to table just some stuff and it's just there. So what I've decided to do is kind of teach myself a new trade and then focus on things that are kind of coronavirus proof. So I put a lot of effort into, the sync world. I was doing that, the year leading up to this. And I thank the Lord that I was doing that, because now with this season now, like a lot of those seeds that I planted are now turning into fruit. And then also, I have a new thing that I can do. Up until maybe a year, 2 years ago, I wasn't even really thinking about sync. Which anyone that doesn't know what sync is synchronizing audio with video for television. So, all those Ford commercials, they have to have background music. So creating content for ESPN and all of that. So I've just really, really dived more into that. And then I've been teaching myself a new trade, which, I took up the stock market literally right before coronavirus kind of shut everything down. So that's been a very interesting challenge for me. But I'm actually happy. Like, I've learned a lot and making excellent progress there. But yeah, I don't know if you pivot. I think you just kind of go with what works right now. I think that's kind of the thing,
Yeah, I think, Derek, it's interesting because I was looking through your tweets and Instagram, and one of the tweets that stuck out to me, you said, growing up broke and then getting money is a constant state of feeling scared that every dollar you spend is going to lead to your ruin, even when you can buy it 1,000 times over, or feeling guilty for spending money. So we know that that's like, during this time, if you're already kind of having that triggering thought during COVID-19, right? Now it's like, whoa, like, how are you handling that mental thought process of of being afraid of not having enough?
Yeah, I won't lie. Probably the first, I think maybe, the first 4 or 5 weeks, I really went through a hard season. And my mom will tell you, like, she came, it was so crazy. She actually came to kind of help out with the house because, my main source of income that I know shows every summer, fall, spring, I know that's going to be a season for me to, grow my budget. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that. And I did go through a season of a little bit of panic because even though I have all these other streams, like, that uncertainty, like, what happens next? How I've been dealing with it, I've really just kind of settled into the reality of this is where we're at. Like, it's not, things are not changing anytime soon. So you can either focus on being frustrated about what you don't have or what you lost, or you can look at what you have and say, how do I make that work in the season?
Nice.
And that is the mental pivot that I had to make, which was, rather than longing for something back here that's out of reach, like, how do I look at what I have and say, okay, well, I have some cool irons in the fire over here, and I have some things over there. Let's try to see if we can either accelerate the growth on those things or look for other things that may work. So,
yeah, man, I think that comes from a lot of, I know for me, it's like that's one thing I've been thinking about even before all this happened, but I just realized it's kind of like magnifies how much of a sort of poverty and mindset that we can come from. When you come from nothing, you always don't feel like what you have is enough, or you're always afraid of not losing. And then you see all this stuff going on around with you around the world. And like, man, there's not going to be enough for tomorrow. But one thing, there's one quote that one of my favorite books that I read probably once a year, if once every other year, is a book called Celebration of Discipline. And he tells like this little story about how a child, he would always get up and fix his child scrambled eggs for breakfast. And his child would never get up and like save some of his scrambled eggs because he wasn't sure that he wasn't going to get scrambled eggs tomorrow. He trusted that his father was always going to give him scrambled eggs tomorrow. So he ate all of his food today. And I feel like that's really what we have to do when we're looking around. And I think that's one thing that separates being a Christian urban artist versus being just an artist in general, is the fact that with all this chaos and stuff that's going on around us, we can actually know that it's not the amount of shows that we do that's providing for us. It's not about the amount of money that we're making from sales or the job that we have. It's not that's really providing for us. When we truly are walking in faith, like knowing that we're connected to God, like He's going to be our provider. But at the same time, when you see something on the horizon, and like to have faith without works is dead. So it's like Noah had faith. He had faith that it was going to rain. So he had to do some things to prepare ahead of time to get there. He sounded like a fool to everybody when he was like, hey, the rain is coming. They're like, no, you're an idiot. Why are you building this boat out in the middle of nowhere? Right. Up until it started raining. And we can clearly see the storm clouds coming on the horizon. And they're not only coming, I mean, they hit us. Yeah. And like we might be in the eye of a hurricane right now. But during this time, what are some of those things you feel like more practical things? It's like, I need to do this, and this to make sure that, like, what are some of those things that are virus proof, that it's not just dependent on being on the road, that you've learned how to navigate to do, that put you in the position you're in right now?
Yeah, well, if you're talking about from an artist perspective, I think a lot of times artists sleep on what publishing is. Yeah. And finding ways to make money with the actual exploitation of the song, as opposed to performing the song. But man, how can I get this song in the next, and it doesn't even have to be the next Marvel movie. Like, there's, local Ford dealerships. I'm sure they're doing commercials. How can I get my music into the next local spot for the radio station or the next, whatever? If there's a commercial that you see all the time with local businesses, like how can I find a way to pitch my music for those spots? Or, how can I engage? And here's the thing this is one of my most frustrating things that I see happen with artists. Like you see artists with this desire to be Instagram, Twitter, TikTok famous, but they have no idea on how does that make them money.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's like, why do you want 150,000 Instagram followers? Why do you want 1 million TikTok followers? Like, what financially does that do besides propping up your ego? Like, what does that do besides propping your ego up? And I believe a lot of artists don't have a plan financially for their social media. So that would be a thing I would ask is, how can I exploit, for people that like social media is their thing they love? Man, if you have 5,000 Instagram followers, like how much money is that 5,000 Instagram followers generating you on a monthly basis? If the answer to that is zero, then you have an issue there. That's a business that you haven't exploited yet. Or even if it's just using that to connect with your fans, thinking of that as a business. So I would say publishing, I would say social media with the intent to monetize. I would say those would be the two big things. Like, the concert thing is real big. So finding a way to do online concerts. But I really think it's finding ways to connect with people from home, So, I know, right now we're using a Zoom call. So maybe it's a Zoom call for all your fans. And, maybe it's exclusive merch for the people that attend the Zoom call, right? So it's thinking, how do I monetize the things that are in front of me? I think that is the key in all of this.
Yeah, I think one of those things is like people don't realize music, what I'm learning is music is most valuable when it's attached to something else. Music is valuable when it's either attached to a movie, or it's attached to a commercial, or it's attached to a video game, or most importantly, it's attached to a memory. Like we all have those songs that come on. We know, man, that was summer 2005. Like I never forget. Like there's some songs that, man, that song way back, Aaliyah, when I forgot Aaliyah was on, and I had the biggest crush on Aaliyah. But that anytime an Aaliyah song comes on, I remember 2-a-day football practices because I was in high school and I was going to football practices, and like those are the type of things that songs are sort of attached to. And one of the things I feel like artists try to do is they try to get their name out there so much. I want to try to get my name out there. I want people to follow me. I want people to follow me, as opposed to getting their songs out there, getting their songs attached to several different things. And that's one thing that I see that you've done a really great job at as an artist, like, because you're one of those artists that I'll see perform. And I look at the audience. I remember we're at Life Fest, was it last year, 2 years ago? I can't remember what it was. I just remember looking at the audience and people out there, they wanted to turn up just because it was the after party. But as many times as like, it'll be a song that comes on, it's like, oh, I didn't even know he sang that song. Or I didn't even know he sang that song. What are some of the ways that you've been able to get your music to these different locations where people like recognize the song even more so than they recognize who made the song?
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about music is that is kind of the thing. A lot of times people's songs are bigger than they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've just been blessed, quite honestly, to have, I would say, I guess I don't know if I can say this on a Christian thing, but I've had luck working my favor, right place, right time, to where my songs created a moment for people. Like the song I did, like we didn't really put a lot of effort into it, and it just was the right place, right time. Astronaut was right place, right time. But some of the practical things that I've done, I was talking to my brother about this earlier. It's a lot hard. Like everyone thinks, once my song makes it on the radio, that's when I'll start working the song or whatever. It's like, no, I start when nobody cares about the song. If I gotta be in everybody's DM, back when I first dropped Empire, which is one of my most successful records, when I first dropped Empire, it had a great first week because I literally texted everyone in my phone and told them I dropped the album. Like, I
got that text.
People, right. I don't think people realize, like, how important it is to tell people about what you're doing, even if it's a little awkward, even if it's a little weird, and do it, by the time it gets on the radio, hey, the work is done. Like, I'm working to get it in the hands. Like, so I think for a lot of those songs, it's just been good old fashioned elbow grease.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm DMing all my fans, yo, new records out. You know what I mean? I'm emailing, email blast, all of that. I've built all these channels to be able to connect with people. So I would say for any artist, if you don't have those channels built to be able to connect with people, if you don't have an email list, if you don't have, I have a group on Instagram that are my top fans that I talk to often, so whenever, if I say, hey, I'm dropping a new song, I don't even have to ask them to post it at this point. They're going to post it just because we have that kind of relationship. So I think that is what's played into that. I hope that helped a little bit.
Yeah. I think actually listening to you speak, it reminds me of what Charlemagne the God just said on the Breakfast Club. He was talking about, all these artists are getting on, talking about they're complaining because Instagram is flagging them or, taking down their Twitter accounts and just constantly blocking them. And Charlemagne was like, you never owned it. Like this, you don't own Instagram. You don't own Twitter. You don't own TikTok. Like, so why are you mad? Like when it ain't working for you? Point is that these tools are meant to help you build your platform and then jump off of it and make your own platform, which you've done a great job of doing, looking at your website. One thing I didn't know that you were a part of, Derek, is the Ownership is the New Black. Looks like it's your company. Ownership is the New Black is a movement promoting and supporting Black ownership, shifting our consumer power to ownership power. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I was watching an interview on the Breakfast Club actually with Dr. Claude Anderson. And Dr. Claude Anderson said that at the end of slavery, Black people owned 0.5% of the wealth in America. And today we own probably 1.5% of the wealth in America. So considering the contributions that we've added to this country, I mean, literally there's nothing in this country that wasn't built off of the backs of Black people. The fact that we only own 1.5% of the wealth, and declining, by the way. But we also spend upwards towards, I think, $3 trillion a year. So knowing that means that there's a problem with how we are distributing our wealth. And for me, I'm very passionate about seeing, I've always been told, everyone knows me and my social justice stances. And one of the big pushback that a lot of people will say is, well, people just need to pick themselves up by their bootstraps. And a lot of that first comes with education. So for me, I'm like, let me educate as many young African Americans as I can on how to not just get wealth, but to retain it. See, that's the problem in anything. Like with me doing stocks right now, gaining money in the stock market is not hard. But retaining money in the stock market is the hardest thing you'll ever do. Like, that is what it is. Dr. Dre even said, money is easy to make, but hard to keep. And that is what I want to see happen within the Black community, which is, let's take this $3 trillion and rather than just watching it escape our community, but actually build things within our community that will be able to prop us up. And I think COVID-19 exposes why those things are needed, because when you look at most of the businesses that are suffering, it's Black-owned businesses, it's minority-led businesses. It's when you look at the high mortality rate in America, it's mostly Black people. Well, that's because we don't have hospitals that specialize in Black people, like that are ran by Black people, that specialize in our issues and know how to deal with diabetes and things of that nature. We don't have those things in our communities that serve us well. So for me, I'm trying to shift the conversation from, hey, instead of buying Jordans, buy stock in Jordan, right? Instead of buying McDonald's every day, have some stock in McDonald's, let the dividend buy your McDonald's, right? That's kind of the focus for right now. So
that's what I'm talking about. Because in order for us to be able to understand where we're going in the future, we have to understand the history and our past. And you've done such a good job with that, with looking back at our history. Like when you back in Black History Month, going back through all these different things, several different things we've talked about. First, knowing who you are as an artist, because people don't know Derek Minor now just as an artist or just as a one song that you've done, but you're a dope artist, but they know you as a producer. They know you as now this venture of what your heart truly is, to being able to teach African Americans to come up out of poverty and understand how to earn wealth or retain wealth. It's something bigger than just music. It's really identifying who you are and understanding what your purpose is in your future. And I'm noticing that as social media proliferates everything, we're moving away from the days of artists you see them on TV, you see them on the stage, but they're kind of at a distance. And all you know them for is their music. You have to be a person that stands for more than your just music. And you've been able to do that in so many different ways, from starting the ownership as the New Black to producing and all that other stuff that you do. But we have to see it bigger than just music, bigger than just writing some songs. And if artists aren't doing that, and you're only sort of one-dimensional in this world that we're going into, can't see how you could make it other than just it's not just making songs, because anybody can do that now. And I wanted to ask one last question before I go, because knowing that, I know we've had a couple of conversations about ownership and having a label and doing that stuff. You work with several different artists on your label. You started a label, you decided to own that and build that brand and build that company up. And what have you been doing to teach your artists to prepare them for what's to come?
So our model is totally different from a lot of record labels. So record label models are this. They're like, hey, we're signing you and we're going to use your youth and we're going to make as much money off of you and your youth. and then we're going to let you go. And then that's that. Our motto is this: I want to build you in your youth, and then I want you to create a record label under our record label that's going to be bigger than us for multiple reasons. One is, I've already groomed you and helped you experience, and you already understand. So why would I wait until, you're done making music and then let you go and that be the end of it? Like, I'm actually training. Like right now, Cannon's opening a new label. Me and Tony have been talking back and forth about, is he going to open up a new record label? Like, so for me, I'm like, yo, let's put y'all's record labels under our umbrella. Let's create an ecosystem,
right? And
let us be the engine. If that engine was good enough and it worked for you, let us be the engine for your next endeavors. I want to retain your business. I don't want to just throw you out the window because you're not 22 anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of our philosophy, which is like, yo, let's build an ecosystem of trade. And that, I believe that is something that allows me to do business with you, not just for 5 years, but 15 years, 50 years, right? That's the goal for me is long term. Everything with me is always long term. And that's kind of hard in music because everyone is always focused on the short term goals, right? It's, I want to get this $100,000 advance so I can go and quickly get me, put a down payment on a car, get me a nice little apartment, give me a nice little crib downtown overseeing the city. You know what I'm saying? Get some gold. That's what people are thinking. For me, I'm like, well, I don't need the advance if I believe in a product enough to think over the next 5 years, I can make triple what that would be, right? So that's kind of our focus, is always long term. I'm always thinking long term. I rarely think short term unless it's just very, very lucrative. It would have to be extremely lucrative for me to just think short term.
Yeah. Derek, I love your heart. I've never even read anything about your Ownership is the New Black until recently. So I was blown away because the album that I like from you is The Trap. Like, I was like, okay, I have a dream. Okay, he's going there. He's talking about some things that I think are super important conversations to have in the African American community. So when I hear you talk about, okay, I'm not just going to talk about the issues that are in the African American community, but I'm going to do something to solve the problem. We talk about urban. We had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago. And what is urban? And what's urban hip hop? Christian hip hop. And I have beef with it straight up because a lot of the Christian hip hop that's being put out is not being put out by people of color. Like, they don't own it. So we are disposable because we don't own our library. We don't own our, masters. You know what I mean? We're like trying to chase after these systems and structures that don't really know us, but like to take our culture and be culture vultures. And then we complain. Well, how do we solve that? Right? You're talking about, here's how we solve it. We got to come together. We've got to own our stuff. We got to help each other own our stuff. We need to mobilize each other to own our stuff. We need to keep it close. I mean, this isn't rocket science. Like, that's what a lot of African American communities have done in music. So I'm sorry if I'm not getting this right, but wasn't that like the whole Jay-Z and all them? Weren't they doing all that? Like, didn't they all come out from the same camp? Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. And I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but point is that I think I've yet to see that happen in Christian urban music, except for 116 and Reach Records. Like, that whole thing. Wait, was 116 a part of Reach?
Yeah.
Right, that whole thing. I've seen that happen, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and the thing, even within that,
that's why. Did I just wait? I think I just unveiled something. What's your page?
I would say even the thing within that, it's such a, like, Reach 116 was a very, very extremely powerful movement, and it went really, really well. But I think, honestly, where we started to lose momentum is when we started making better, on the outside, what seemed like better business decisions, which is, okay, let's partner with this Christian thing that has all these listeners and followers. And you start making more songs that sound like K-Love than songs that sound like, the streets. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of, it definitely was good in the short term, but then now you're kind of stuck in this world of, Christian music that doesn't really identify with your culture.
That's right.
Your color or anything. So then now you don't really have a place to pivot to. Only thing you can do is either go further down there or just remove it altogether. Right. So I think with Christian rap, there was a season where Christian rappers saw that working for reach. They were like, yo, I need to get on Winter Jam because the craze on Winter Jam. Yo, I need to get on this radio station or that radio station because the craze on there, not knowing that he was the exception to the rule.
Right.
He wasn't the rule. That door wasn't open for Black urban people like that. So what's better for us, if you're talking about in the long term, is for us to have something that is hip hop, urban based.
Yep.
And that is the base of it. Yeah. I'm not saying we can't work with other people and other groups. Like, that's obviously foolish. But saying at the end of the day, this is where we butter our bread. Is on this plate, right? And I think that is the mistake. Quite honestly, that's not even a Christian rap mistake. That is a Black people mistake that's been happening for the past 100 years, which is Black people will grow something to this cultural phenomenon, like world star hip hop. It grew to a cultural phenomenon. Then he sold it to Viacom, and you see it fall off. It's still, it's not a cultural thing because they lost the culture. It happens all the time. You go look at all these old school soul bands and rock and roll bands and all that. They have the culture's with them, and then they say, man, we could take this to the next level if we just partner with these people that are rich. Now, they don't understand our music, don't understand our culture, don't understand anything about us, nor do they care. And then what happens is you partner with them, really you sell it to them for a minority ownership stake. They run it into the ground. Yep. And then they just go find the next thing. So I think we have to be better and more smart and stop getting shampooed.
So how do we fix that? So this idea of predicting the future, we're looking at a year from now to 5 years from now. In your mind, what does CHH look like? What does music look like? What are you doing for us to not fall into those same traps that you've personally experienced before?
Well, I don't know what CHH looks like in the future. Unfortunately, because, I just don't. There's so many different agendas. And one thing about it is if it's enough money on the table, people will always take the easier way out, regardless of what the long-term effects of it is. So I would hope that people have learned from the past and have said, you know what, we are better when we work together, and we are better when we own what we do. Now, and I'm okay with partnering with other labels. You should definitely partner with the big Christian organization that don't understand what you're doing, but don't give them majority stake. Right. Like, y'all partner side by side. You know what I mean? And so I would hope that people would begin to learn that lesson. But one thing about it I know is it's really hard to turn down money when it's right in your face and you're broke. So
So don't be broke when you go to this table.
So back to Trey McIntosh. Even if you need to get a job so you can keep ownership.
But don't. I guess what I'm saying is, don't overlook. Like, I'm learning so many lessons from the stock market, and the stock market is this: fear of missing out is the way that you lose all of your money. When you're watching a stock, like right now, people will send me stuff and they'll say, yo, this stock is at this all-time high. Well, when it's there, that's not when you want to buy. Like, that's when you want to sell. Yeah. So if I missed it going all the way up, then I just missed it. I don't have a fear of missing out, right? So when everybody's signing record deals and you got all these companies looking, I'm sitting back saying, okay, what's next, right? And I think that's what urban Christian music has to start doing, is rather than saying, oh man, everybody's getting signed, I'm not getting signed. Like, you need to be saying, what can I build now to where I'm the person signing people 5 years from now? Because that's where I'm at right now.
Come on.
Like, I'm signing people now. Like, it does. I don't care what the rest of the industry is doing. I've built a thing that has allowed me to right now, while coronavirus is going crazy, I'm not really panicking anymore because I've rationalized and realized, no lie, last month was one of my most profitable months financially off of music in the middle of the coronavirus thing. I got some of the biggest publishing checks and writers checks I've ever gotten. Mm-hmm. And it's because I built something that I own. And, in times like this, while people are being restricted, I'm not going to fire myself. You know what I'm saying? I work for me, so I'm not going to fire me. But the whole illusion of security when you work for somebody and have a job, this should have shaken people to say, it may not be as secure as I thought it was, because 34 million people are out of jobs. Because you got to think, who's the first people that are going to be fired? It's going to be the people that don't own the business. Mm-hmm.
Bruh. We have so much more to talk about regarding this subject, but time is running short.
But let me quote real quick.
Okay.
Let me quote before we close up. 2 days ago, you tweeted, "Artists, be humble and strategic. Just as fast as you got here, you can be right back where you came from. I've seen them rise and fall many times. The humble and strategic are still living their dream. There's exceptions to every rule, but few are the exception. And Derek, you are an exception." Absolutely. Thanks for sharing the knowledge with us, brother.
Thank you.
Absolutely,
Thank you so
man. Man, follow Derek on Twitter, because and Instagram. If you want to learn some dope stuff, follow him on Twitter. If you just want to laugh, just follow him on Instagram. so, bro, thank you so much for joining us this week on the show. Definitely going to put some links to your all the stuff you got going on down in the description below. We just got started on this conversation. So we're going to have to continue this conversation a little bit more in the comment section and on the Jam the Hype Society, bro. So thank you for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Man, anytime. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Derek.
Peace.
So, man, we definitely have to continue this conversation.
We have to have him on for part 2.
There's so much more. Really, ownership is going to be one of those things. If we don't own things, we're powerless to make any sort of decisions about what we have going on.
Yep.
There's a lot more strategic stuff that needs to happen as far as creating something that nobody else has. One thing I guess my observation is, as Christians in general, Christian music, Christian urban music, Christian hip hop, a lot of times we are riding the wave once the wave is already hit. Yep. Once we see the album being successful and it's number one, then we start making those type of songs. And I'm like, if the surfing analogy makes a lot of sense to me. It's like, if you're out there trying to surf, you don't start pedaling once the wave comes. You have to pedal before the wave gets there. In fact, you obviously, even if you're not creating the wave, you can't ride a wave of something that you are not ahead of. Yep. And we have to get ahead of the curve. We have to start thinking forward about not what's happening right now. We got to get our mind past coronavirus and what it's going to take to move past that. What are your thoughts before we take off?
Yeah, I think, who's been doing it really well, and I've seen it happen, is Alicia Keys. She stayed in the game. She's having her moment. So she has a book deal with Oprah. She just released a book. COVID caused her to have to delay her album, but she put out a single with with CNN. Good job. So now she hosted the Grammys. She is a powerhouse. She's releasing her own tea line with Starbucks, Alicia Teas. So I'm just so proud of her for, she's moving with the times. She's staying in the game. And so I think you're absolutely right. You have to look ahead. And your career doesn't have to end like what Derek was saying. Once you pass 23, if anything, you should be more wise at that time to be able to diversify your streams of income. Which I would love for Derek to come back on our show and talk about the 7 streams of wealth that he's got going on. But anyways, I think we just started a really great conversation. And if anybody who's listening out there finds this interesting, hit us up, subscribe, comment. We'd love to chat it up with you. Hit up Derek. He has awesome resources. You can go to his website, actually, if you want to know more about the Ownership is the New Black, at weownnow.com.
Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in this week. Make sure you hit us up on Instagram. Be there for Talkback Tuesday on Instagram. We'll be just talking back to you, talking back to some of our artists, getting a chance to know each other face to face over there on Instagram. And then for next week's conversation, make sure you tune in right here. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you guys again next week. Peace.